All right, thanks, Mark. Welcome, everybody. We'll get right to it because I want to leave plenty of time at the end to go over our walkthrough form and address any questions that you might have. Here's a few resources, link to our rules page. Also a great resource that Mitzi runs out of the Johnson City office is our monthly newsletter. If you'd like to subscribe to that, just shoot her an email. Here's her email address, and she'll get you on that list or you'll get those monthly newsletters from us. Also have a link to the compliance toolbox for this year. And just a disclaimer to get out of the way, we do not endorse any of the brands or manufacturers or vendors' equipment that you may see in the photos or we may talk about in this presentation. All right, so jumping right into it, the new requirement summary. So this is just a basic overview of the new requirements that you'll be looking at. So you got to do spill and overfill prevention equipment testing. We'll dive deeper into that here in just a minute. Sump integrity testing if you're using interstitial monitoring as your method of release detection on your piping. Release detection equipment testing, so it's going to be an annual operability test that we'll dive into a little more later in the presentation. Your monthly and annual walkthrough inspections. If you've not had a chance to look at that form, hopefully you're already using it, but we'll go over that at the end of the presentation as well, as long as time allows. And then we'll go over compatibility requirements and then release detection for emergency generators. All right, so all the testing that we require in these new requirements must be conducted by a qualified person as defined by EPA. That means there's 4 ways you can be a qualified person. You can either be a licensed contractor, certified by the device manufacturer that you're working on, approved by an authority to have or having jurisdiction, which is us. If you can show competence, we can get you approval that way. Also, conduct in accordance with our guidance, and you can demonstrate adequate experience. So if you've been doing this for 15 or 20 years, that may get you in that way. The other way is to get certification from a nationally recognized organization, such as PEI, which is the Petroleum Equipment. All right, so what's new? Monthly walkthrough inspections is new for spill prevention equipment. Also, a 3-year spill prevention integrity test is new and part of the new requirements. And then your overfill prevention equipment, which is your flappers, alarms, we'll get into that a little bit more also, is a 3-year requirement. Record keeping requirement, all this, you know, we mentioned the record keeping requirements a few times throughout this presentation, but the best resources on our actual monthly and annual form. It'll give you a breakdown of how long you have to keep everything and how long the tests are good for. But just to go over it with you, monthly spill prevention walkthroughs, you have to keep those a year. So you'll have 12 months of them. They're good for 1 calendar year. And when we come out to do an inspection, it's not going to be anything new. We will ask for the last 12 months. So it may include 2 forms broke up. 3-year prevention, spill prevention device integrity test. That's either a hydrostatic vacuum or pressure test on your spill prevention is required every 3 years. And overfill device operability test is every 3 years on the requirement. Double wall spill prevention equipment monthly monitoring results are required. So you must keep those records as long as the monthly monitoring method is used. And I'll explain that a little bit later in the presentation also. Okay, so here's just some examples of the overfill prevention and spill devices that you would see at a UST facility. On the far left, so just a regular spill bucket. They're actually doing a hydrostatic test in this photo, so it's full of water. your flow restriction ball floats, those are phasing out. So as those fail during your annual inspection, you will either have to replace it with a automatic shut-off device, flapper valve, or a high-level audible or visual alarm that you see in the picture. So you can talk to your contractor and decide what's best for your specific facility out of those other alternate two methods of overfill prevention. All right, so your action step's going to be to conduct a spill prevention integrity test every 3 years, document the results on the approved form, which you'll see on the right of the page, or you can use a double-wall spill bucket with an electronic interstitial monitoring sensor. If you're already performing interstitial monitoring on your piping, it really won't be that much of an upgrade for you to monitor your spill buckets if you wish. You'll just maintain the records just like you would for you're currently doing for your piping, and that will keep you from having to do a hydrostatic test on those spill buckets every 3 years. The responsibility of the tank owner is going to be to keep a passing spill prevention integrity test within the last 3 years. So it's on a 3-year rotating basis. So every time it expires, you need to have another one done. And then if you happen, let's say for whatever reason, you decide you don't want to monitor, your sensors go bad and they're too expensive to replace, you can do away with the sensors in the spill bucket. You just have to begin doing the integrity test 30 days after discontinuing your sensor monitoring, and then every 3 years thereafter you'll still have to do the hydrostatic or vacuum pressure test on the spill bucket. All right, overfill devices. So this is your functionality testing on overfill. It's got to be done at least every 3 years, and those records must be maintained within the last 3 years. So you got to keep one until it expires, then have another one done. All right, so 3 types of overfill prevention, as I showed you in the slide earlier in the photos. You got automatic shutoff, which is flapper valves. Those are set to engage at 95% of the full tank volume. Flow restriction, which is the ball floats, they're set to engage at 90% of your tank volume, and they cannot be replaced or repaired after yesterday. Overfill alarm. These are set to activate at 90%, and it's a loud alarm that's outside your facility where your delivery driver can hear or see the alarm activate. All right, so a little bit deeper dive into automatic shutoff devices. They slow down the flow and actually stop the flow of product at 95% in the tank, and they go in your fill pipe as part of your drop tube. There's an example of how the float works. All right, so flow restriction or ball floats, these sit in the top of your tank, the little cage with a ball hanging in it, and as your tank fills, the ball floats in the product and shuts off the air being able to leave the tank. So your vapors go out that hole that's in that little tube in the ball float, and as that ball touches the bottom of the pipe, it cuts off that and greatly reduces the flow of the delivery to the tank to alert the driver that it's almost full. Overfill alarms are pretty self-explanatory. They're outside your facility somewhere, and as soon as your ATG probe reaches 90%, they will alarm and notify the driver. All these things are checked during your operability test as well to make sure that they're working properly. Okay, so repairs. You have to test or inspect the components within 30 days after a repair or replacement to the spill or overfill prevention equipment. Hopefully they'll do that as soon as they do the repair, so you wouldn't have to call somebody out twice. Hopefully you just have them do it that day. And then you have to maintain that documentation for 3 years of your repair. All right, interstitial monitoring. This is for, it's required at every site that was installed after July 24th of 2007, but there may be certain facilities that are utilizing this that were installed prior to that. So if you're using it for your method of release detection, even if you installed it before 2007, if interstitial monitoring is your primary method of release detection, you must conduct the containment sump testing every 3 years. And you have to maintain that test for 3 years. So once you have it done, it's valid for 3 years, then you have to have another one, and you have to keep that record too in case we come to do an inspection in the interim. All right, so sump repairs. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of this in the future, being that this is the first go-around of actually testing these sumps, and some of them have been in the ground for, well over 10 years now. So the biggest thing as an owner is you want to make sure that any repairs that are being done are fuel compatible. So if you have a sump that has to be repaired, make sure you check with your contractor that it's a UL approved repair device that they're using, and it falls under section 2447 of the UL requirements. And just make sure you have that conversation with them if you do have to have some repairs done, because there is some products on the market that are made to repair sumps, but there's also Flex Seal and all sorts of other things that you just want to make sure that you're getting what you pay for. Also, once you have a repair done, your sumps must be integrity tested within 30 days of that repair, and then you have to maintain that record for 3 years, just like you would a normal test. Also, any repairs to your UST system, as always, have to be maintained for the operational life of that system. All right, so hydrostatic testing. So when you do as water disposal, if you have water disposable questions, we do not regulate the disposal of that test water. The Division of Solid Hazardous Waste Management and the Division of Water Resources, both are at every local field office. If you have questions about how to deal with your test water, contact those agencies or us, and we can get you in contact with them. Okay, so operability testing. This is annual testing of electronic and mechanical release detection components. So you have to maintain the 3 previous annual tests of this, and it would include your line leak detectors, your annual function test on those, your annual interstitial monitoring tank and sump sensor tests. Also, ATG and other controllers, so you have to, your automatic tank gauge has to be functionality tested. They're going to make sure that everything alarms when it does, and each manufacturer has its own protocol for how to do the operability test on it. But they'll be checking to make sure the alarms alarm when they should. They'll be making sure that your system's configured properly and wired up right, and then they'll test the battery back up to make sure if you have an outage, you don't lose all your test results. They'll remove the probes from the tank, make sure you don't have any buildup, and that your floats are moving freely, no damage to the shaft or anything like that. And, less common, I don't know of anywhere in Tennessee we have it yet, but vacuum pumps and pressure gauges have to be checked if you have those in place to make sure that they have proper communication with the sensors and the controller. But like I say, that's the least common thing that I know about in Tennessee. Okay, so here's some pictures of what they're going to be checking. Top left is just a typical ATG tank gauge. It's a Vita root console. Below that is an interstitial monitoring sensor and a submersible sump. And then you got an ATG probe. The floats are separated there to show you what they'll be checking. They'll be sliding both of those floats up and down to make sure that they alarm as they're programmed in your ATG. And your line leak detectors are attached to your pump head in most configurations in the far right pictures. All right, jumping to walkthrough inspections. These walkthroughs have to be done every 30 days. I'm going to go over the form with you at the end. Hopefully we've got plenty of time to do that and show you what questions are asked and what's applicable in each configuration. You have to maintain the monthly records for those 30-day walkthroughs, and it just consists of spill prevention device checks for, checking your spill buckets for liquid, debris, or damage. That's really nothing new off of the old requirements. We just included it into this form where everything that you need to do for your facility each year is on our monthly and annual walkthrough form. You'll check the tank risers, your fill riser rather, make sure your flapper valve's not damaged and that you don't have any obstructions in the fill pipe. Also going to check the operation of release detection equipment and make sure that you're getting your monthly passes on, if you have an ATG, make sure all your sensors are working right if you're on interstitial monitoring, and that make sure that you have a pass from your CERT vendor if you're on CERT. You also be looking for the presence of alarms or other unusual operating conditions, and make sure that your release detection records are current. All right, so every 30 days, remove any liquid from your spill bucket, and really you should be doing that after each delivery just to make sure that you don't degrade your spill bucket prematurely. I recommend checking them every time you get a delivery, but every 30 days at least, you need to look for liquid or debris in your spill bucket, check for cracks or any damage, remove any fill pipe obstructions that you may have if you can. I mean, a lot of times you can't reach them. You have to probably get a contractor or somebody in there to do it. You want to make sure your fill cap fits properly. You've got a little O-ring on the bottom of it. Make sure that gasket's in good shape, because that's the easiest way to get water into your fuel tank is if that gasket either falls off or becomes cut or torn. And then make sure your fill cap's not touching the bottom of the spill bucket lid. Most of the spill buckets in UST facilities are able to be driven over, and you don't want the weight of a car pushing down on the top of your tank to dent it in. I mean, that can cause quite a bit of damage to a tank if it's in contact with the lid. Just record your results on that form, and we'll go over that here in a few minutes. All right, so if you're on CERT, which is statistical inventory reconciliation, every 30 days, review your data. Make sure you have good accuracy and that your daily fuel level readings are matching up with your sales. Check your tank monthly for water. Make sure you use the right water finding paste. My favorite one is Star Gel. If you got any experience with them, I just think it's the easiest to read. CERT reports received every 30 days from a vendor. So that means that you get a result every month from them. Make sure they're sending that to you, and that you're sending the results to them in a timely manner to get it back in time. All right, so review your results once you do get them. If you have any inconclusives or fails, make sure you report those to us as inspector releases in the 72-hour time frame. All right, monthly walkthrough. So this is for if you got an ATG. So what you want to do on an ATG is make sure you got no alarms or any unusual operating conditions, which would be an alarm. Make sure your monthly results that you have a pass for each tank monthly, and make sure you don't have any fails. Report all suspected releases. So just like always, you know, if you do have something come up, let us know. You got 72 hours and we'll come check it out for you. Conduct a static test if no monthly results available. So this, you know, if you're running CSLD, there is certain situations that you'll run into if you're a real high volume site where you may not have enough idle time to get a pass on CSLD. I've seen it at a few sites over the years. Most people really don't, I guess the tank owner level don't know that you can you would have to shut your station down at night for like 4 hours, but you can run a static test if you don't have a CSLD pass by the end of the month. Takes about 4 hours to run that test manually. But you can get with your contractor and discuss that, but it is an option to keep you from having to do a tank tightness test if you miss a month. All right. Monthly sensor or interstitial monitoring. We've changed to that. So requirements for that would be to check your monthly sensor status and alarm history reports. Make sure that all your sensors are normal, that you have no alarms. If you do have an alarm, document it on our monthly form. There's plenty of area to do that. We'll go over that here in a little bit. And then make sure that you document the alarm and your response to the alarm and put a date on there so we know how quick it was addressed. If you're not able to address any alarms within 72 hours, make sure you report those as suspected releases to us to avoid any fund eligibility issues. All right, so here's a shot of the first page of our form. So these walkthrough inspections, each device manufacturer has a little bit different instructions, but the form, if you use our form, you will meet this requirement. So there's 3 ways to meet the requirement. You can use the device manufacturer's form, the nationally recognized practice, which would be a PEI form. It's a lot longer than ours. Or you can use our form, which is the CN 2544 that I'll go over with you in more detail at the end of the presentation. Any of those 3 forms, you will meet the monthly walkthrough requirement if you use. Annual walkthrough inspections. So these have to be conducted once a year, so once every 12 months, and they consist of looking at your sumps, checking for damage, leaks to your containment area, or, you know, if you see fuel in there, you definitely need to let us know, unless, you know, you can see where it's leaking and it's not like at the bottom of a penetration fitting or something like that, and you can remove it and repair it. For double wall sumps, using interstitial monitoring, check for a leak in the interstitial area. I've never seen a double wall sump installed in Tennessee, but I'm sure it's coming in the future. So that is an extra step. Most of our containment sumps are single wall at this time. You check your handheld devices such as your tank gauge sticks for operability and serviceability. So if you're using a stick to form your statistical inventory reconciliation each month, make sure that your button's on the bottom and that stick's legible to 1/8 of an inch. All right, so here's some photos of the areas that you'll be checking. There's an uncontained dispenser that just goes straight in the gravel. There's no under containment sump under it. And then there's a submersible pump beside it that's uncontained. You just want to make sure you're not having any leaks in there, and if you do, you let us know as soon as possible. All right, contained STP there on the far right. This one actually has a sensor in it, so it's monitored interstitially. And, you know, you want to check those, make sure you don't have any small leaks that may not even reach the sensor, and get those repaired before they can become an issue. Okay, record keeping, and like I said, this will be explained a little better, hopefully, when we get to the form itself. But this is what you have to keep for 1 year. So a list of each of the areas that you checked on your form, and if those areas were acceptable or needed action taken. Also, in the comments form, you'll put a description of the actions that you took to correct any issues that you have. And also, if you receive less than at least one delivery every 30 days due to infrequent deliveries, you need to keep your delivery invoices if your spill buckets are not checked every month. So if you're a hospital generator or something like that who only gets 3 deliveries a year, then you can keep your delivery invoices and make sure that you just check them when you get the delivery. We still recommend checking them every 30 days throughout the year, but that is another option. Okay, so general record keeping, there's several of these, but this will be gone over again on the form. It's reiterated on there. So you have to have 12 months of monthly tank leak detection results, depending on no matter what method you're using. An annual line leak detector test, annual release detection operability test, line tightness test, or 12 months of your piping monthly monitoring results if you're on interstitial monitoring. You got a question, Mark?
I do.
Awesome.
I have, if I could interrupt you for a second, Brian Aspel. He says he's a little confused on the hydrostatic sump integrity testing. We have a double-walled tanks with IM, a brine sensor. 2 tanks are sump type, and the rest have spill buckets. Do all tank sump spill buckets require hydrostatic testing, sump integrity testing, and are these 2 one and the same?
Okay, good question. Yes, every spill bucket, whether it was interstitially monitored or not, every single spill bucket has to be hydrostatically tested every 3 years. If you're running a sump, if you have sumps that are interstitially monitored, they also have to be hydrostatically tested every 3 years. So at your facility, both would.
Yeah, he says we are a hospital and only receive fuel oil once every few months.
Okay. Yeah, that wouldn't change that requirement. The only caveat. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it would. That's not going to change the hydrostatic testing requirement. The only thing that you could do is you could keep your delivery tickets if you didn't check the spill bucket every 30 days. If you only checked it the months you got deliveries, you just have to keep up with all your delivery tickets to show. But I mean, if you're doing it that frequently, I would recommend just doing it every month, and that way you don't have to worry about keeping up with your delivery tickets.
Let me unmute Brian for a moment, see if he has any follow-up. See if we answered his question, or you did.
All right.
Brian, you should be open now.
Yeah, can you hear me?
If your mic works. Just barely.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I understand that now. I just, I know we do monthly spill bucket inspections. I don't know if we have the new form. We use the, I forget which form it is. Current form we use.
We can barely hear you, Brian. I'm so sorry.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Better, yes, much better. Thank you.
Get close to the microphone. Yeah, currently we use like the CN 1286 as far as to do our monthly spill bucket inspection. But I guess the new requirement for the monthly walkthrough is probably more detailed than what we did previously.
Yes, it is, and my intention is here in just a few minutes when we get through this presentation to pull that form up and sort of go through with everybody how to use it, because it does pretty much take the place of any of the previous spill bucket dispenser logs and any CP, 60-day rectifier checks, all that stuff is included in that new form. So I'll go through that here in just a little bit.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yep.
Great question, Brian. Thank you. Also, I had a comment by Rhonda Johnson. Rhonda, I'll open you up if you want to talk about just a second. Hold on. There you go. You're unmuted now, Rhonda.
Hey, everybody. I believe, Dustin, you mentioned testing spill bucket even if they have IM on them as far as double wall. If I believe if they put in double wall spill buckets and continuously monitor those for the length of the time that they're in the ground, they wouldn't need the hydrostatic testing, would they?
Dawn, you want to jump in on that? I was under the impression if they didn't do didn't use the sensor that they had to do hydrostatic testing.
So the question is, if they don't have a sensor, if the sump is not used for interstitial monitoring?
This
No,
the
it's not
spill
a sump,
bucket.
Spill bucket, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, if they're continuously monitored, if double wall spill buckets are continuously monitored with interstitial monitoring from the time that they are installed, they wouldn't be required to do a 3-year testing on those spill buckets, would they?
well, if the spill bucket secondary has either a continuously monitored sensor or we've had several questions about the use of the float switches. Since spill buckets are not considered a component for release detection, they don't fall under the release detection criteria, then that float switch may be acceptable, one with a dial on it. But the issue we have is that float switch does not monitor the inner and outer walls of the spill bucket. The only way that can be done is if the manufacturer allows some type of vacuum or pressure testing on secondary. So with that in mind, our division has determined that the only way you can meet that requirement would be with the sensor to get out of hydrant.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that was an option if it's continuously monitored somehow to eliminate the 3-year testing requirement for spill buckets.
Yes.
Thanks.
Good question.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, great observation. There's always more to the story, so thank you.
Oh, yeah. Welcome.
Yeah, so that's all I have for right now, Dustin. So thanks for the interruption. We'll keep on going.
All right, good. All right, let's see. So, 12 months of monthly walkthrough inspections. So that's all be on that form. Your annual walkthrough inspection can be done once a year. Spill bucket integrity test conducted in the last 3 years, unless you're using an electronic sensor. Overfill functionality test conducted in the last 3 years. Sump integrity test conducted in the last 3 years, only if you're using interstitial monitoring. And your corrosion protection test, that's not changed. It's every 3 years, just as before. But you need to keep the last 2 of those tests. 60-day rectifier log has not changed, but it is on this new form. And your triennial testing, if you have US suction, which is determined to be non-safe suction, you have to do that every 3 years. And then all leak detection system maintenance service 1 year from the date of that repair. All right. All right, compatibility. So if you plan on storing greater than 10% ethanol or 20% biodiesel, you must make sure that your tanks are compatible to do that. You know, we have been notified that some companies are interested in exploring E15. Make sure if you do decide to do that with your oil company that your tanks that you have at your facility are compatible to store that, because that's something that we'll be asking for if we do see E15 or anything greater than B20 at your facilities. Be able to provide documentation showing that compatibility for your tanks, piping, sumps, everything's got to be compatible with it. So just make sure that you discuss that with your oil company and your contractor before you decide to go to E15 blended fuel. All right, emergency generator. They have to perform release detection beginning yesterday. So safe suction piping does not require release detection, but there is certain circumstances where you may have a return line that is pressurized. We can help you deal with that on a case-by-case basis. If you have any questions or would like for us to come out of schedule to look at your facility if we've not been there in a while, we can certainly work something like that out with you. But the biggest thing is you have to do release detection on your tank going forward. Go ahead, Mark.
I have another question from Daphne Berry.
All right.
She's just clarifying the hydrostatic testing. Hydrostatic testing is only required for IM sites, correct?
On sumps, yes. Spill buckets everywhere have to be tested hydrostatically or vacuum or pressure. But as far as the sumps for your piping, yes, only if it's interstitially monitored does it have to be tested.
Let me open Daphne's mic up just to make sure.
Yeah.
There was no confusion there. So. Daphne, your mic should be unmuted. Are you there, Daphne? All right, she may not have a mic on. We'll come back to Daphne if she becomes available. So, all right, thank you, Dustin. That's the only question I have right now.
Awesome. All right, so yeah, if you've got questions over generator systems, contact the local field office regarding that system, because each one of them are a little different. It's there's no cookie cutter mold for a generator system. They're all installed in different time periods with different levels of technology, and really those are sort of like marinas. They're on a case-by-case basis. But some guidance that we have for you, EPA has guidance for emergency generator release detection. I think that's still currently in development, but they're pretty close to finishing that, the last update I heard. Also, NFPA code, there's some changes to that as far as no leak detectors. You can't put a leak detector on an emergency generator at a hospital, especially one with positive shutdown, because that probably kills somebody. So make sure that you don't have that configuration in place, or if you do have an electronic leak detector, make sure that it's set to not positive shutdown on a 3-gallon fill. All right, dual purpose. We're still developing guidance on dual purpose. That's why I say just reach out to your local field office if you have questions, and we'll walk you through any questions that you have. Okay, temporarily out of service. So this is a system, normally a system that's empty when all materials have been removed to no less than an inch in the tank. The current TOS requirements are if you have cathodic protection, that still must remain operational as long as that tank's in the ground. And you got to keep the most two recent 3-year CP tests and the 3 most recent 60-day rectifier readings, if you have them pressed current only. If your TOS for more than 3 months, you have to ensure that your pumps, lines, and manways, any ancillary equipment is secured. And if the UST system is empty, which means less than 1 inch, you do not have to perform monthly release detection on that tank. If you have greater than 1 inch of any kind of liquid in that tank, there is a requirement to perform release detection on it. So you need to check those pretty frequently to make sure that you're not getting water ingress. And then if you do, you need to repair it to where that is a tight tank. Release detection must be performed when greater than 1 inch. I already covered that, so we're good there. Additional requirements as of June the 15th. TOS systems are required to have spill and overfill prevention equipment installed. And if the TOS system is empty, the 3-year spill and overfill device testing is not required. But if you do have greater than an inch in there, then you have to keep up with your 3-year spill and overfill testing also. Spill and overfill device testing is required when greater than 1 inch in the tank. So hopefully that covers that. Okay, I won't go over much of this, but just to give you a quick overview of how our fund works, and to let everybody know if you don't already, which I'm sure you do, tank fees have been suspended from this year until June the 30th of 2026. So you don't have to worry about paying the $125 per compartment fee to us anymore till June the 30th of 26. Let's see. Another change is, as of June the 15th of this year, the fund entry level deductible is now based upon your operational compliance status at the time of your release. So we will come out and do an inspection as soon as we're notified of the suspected or confirmed release, and it's pretty much a routine compliance inspection, and that's what will be used to determine your entry level deductible into the fund. All right. So fund reimbursement requirements. So if you fail to timely submit a fund eligibility application, you will not be able to receive reimbursement from the fund. The application deadlines are spelled out under the statute below. And if you fail to submit records demonstrating operational compliance, a higher fund deductible may apply. All right. Any other questions, Mark, while I pull up the form?
Not right now, Brian. Looks all right. So, but please keep your questions coming. So I really appreciate your questions. We really feel like we all learn more when we engage in questions. So keep them coming. Thanks.
All right. So I wanted to show everybody how to get to our, well, if I can type the web link in right. Our monthly form. Easiest way is just to go to tn.gov/environment, and then program areas, go to underground storage tanks. Then you'll see all these little fields here. Our walkthrough form is under new rules and fee suspension. under final forms. And then this is the link to that form, which I've already got up here. All right, so that's how you get to our form. Okay, so this is a form fillable PDF, which means you can type into any of these fields that you want to. And you can, this button here resets the whole form, so don't push it unless you want to clear everything that you got typed in here off. So you want to make sure that you save it before you ever hit that button. If you have multiple facilities, you know, you can use, that's a pretty handy feature, I guess. But to the questions here. So not every one of these applies at every facility. For example, let's just go through it from the top down. You know, visually check your spill bucket. So this would be the equivalent to the former monthly spill bucket inspection log. This would be where you enter your yes that you checked it. If you have any issues, put it on the comments that you had to remove water and the date. You just put the day of the month that you did your inspection up here in this field. And then, you know, you got a question here, check and remove obstructions in the fill pipe. So if you see a stick down in your drop tube, remove it, put your check mark there. You got a question?
No, I was just going to ask you if you wouldn't mind, Dustin, to magnify that form just a bit to make it a little bit bigger so everyone can see it. Yeah, that may be too big. There you go. That looks good. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, and this is, like I said, if you follow this form, you will meet all the requirements. So you don't have to worry about remembering everything that you saw in this presentation. Just get on this form. As long as you fill it out and follow each of these steps, you will meet your requirements. Check your fill caps. You know, I mentioned that earlier in the thing to make sure they're not in contact with your spill bucket lid. Number 4, it's not going to be, there's very few facilities that number 4 will be an issue for, but for double wall spill prevention equipment with interstitial monitoring, this is where you would do your sensor normal and your alarm history printout if you do not want to do the hydrostatic testing. So this is only for spill buckets that have a sensor in them. Okay. Check your release detection equipment to ensure it's operating with no alarms. So just make sure you have a pass and that you don't have any unusual operating conditions. Attach your monthly printout to this form and you'll meet both of those requirements. Review and confirm your release detection records are current. So those are kind of go one and the same. And number 7, hopefully most of the time you're going to have an NA in that section because you didn't have a inspector release that month. We'll go ahead and put NA here too. All right, page 2. Let's see. So the way this works is, depending on what method of release detection you have, depends on what box you check here. So if you have an ATG at your facility that you use for release detection as your primary method, these 2 questions here are the only 2 that you have to answer on this whole page right here. I want to make sure that's clear because I don't know that people that I've talked to about this before was sort of unclear on that. So hopefully that makes sense. So if you've got an ATG, this is where you make sure that your test report's printed and stored with your release detection records and that your console has no active leak alarms. And you just put yes, yes. Same thing here. So if you've got, if you use CERT, you check this box, answer these 4 questions. Same thing with interstitial monitoring. If you use interstitial monitoring for everything, now there will be certain instances where there's multiple methods utilized at a facility. If that's the case and you have an ATG that monitors your tanks, but you've replaced your piping since 2007, then you'll want to check both of these. You'll use this for your tanks portion, this would be, this would cover your piping. All right,
Dustin, I have some questions.
awesome. I expect.
Are you ready? All right. Okay, Brian Asbell, on hydrostatic tests of the sumps, what if you have a chase pipe on the suction and or return side? They, of course, will fill up with water and lower the level of the water in the sump. Is this fine? And you just wait 15 minutes, then record the level and wait 1 hour?
Okay, hey Brian, this may be better to talk about one-on-one, but I'll give you the short answer. Chase piping is not supposed to terminate inside the sump. If it is, you'll probably have to reconfigure that with a aftermarket two-piece boot that you can isolate that chase pipe from the rest of the system. You have to be able to isolate each one of the sumps to test them properly. You know, because if you don't, then you're trying to test an entire system, and you know you don't know if that chase pipe's laid in there flat, if it's still holding or not. So, like I say, we may have to look at your site, maybe one-on-one off of this, and I can be a better help to you, I think, if I can see some pictures and things like that, maybe.
And I'm going to unmute Brian, but he also wanted clarification on number 4 of the form. I'm not sure if that was the previous page, but let me unmute Brian.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry for the questions. Yeah, for number
No,
2,
no, that's good.
it was on the first page.
Yeah, I got you.
I guess I get confused between you because, like, example, the second page talks about auto tank gauging and then interstitial monitoring. I think we have both, unless I get confused. Obviously, we have automatic leak detection, and we run weekly tests on that as well. And then we have obviously interstitial monitoring with the brine sensor that I talked about. So I'm assuming on page 2, I would check both IM and ATG.
Well, all right. So, Brian, I'm sure you have listed a primary method of release detection. Now, most interstitially monitored sites are still running ATG on their tanks, but it's not their primary method of release detection because it's not allowed for us to accept. So that may be what you're talking about. But if you're using interstitial monitoring for your tanks and your piping, then you would only have to select the interstitial monitoring checkbox. Now, if your tanks were installed prior to 2007 and they don't have an interstitial space to monitor, and you don't have a sensor in them, then you would have to check both boxes because ATG would be your method of release detection for your tanks. Is that the way it works there?
Well,
I'm not familiar with the facility.
I believe the tanks were installed before I got here 2009, and I think the tanks were installed a few years before that. And like I said, we do have, because they put new tanks in, they put the double-walled fiberglass, I believe. So we do have interstitial monitoring for, I guess, if you say for release detection, but then we also have auto tank gauging with all the sensors for high, low, the whole 9 yards. So
yeah. No, so yeah, interstitial monitoring, if that's all you're utilizing for release detection, that's the only section that you'll have to fill out. Now, you know, you still have to have that annual operability done on your probes and things like that to make sure everything is working properly. But as far as release detection goes, interstitial monitoring, as long as you have a sensor in every interstice and every sump, then you're covered on that.
okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And I have another question from Mickey Hutchison. If we have our own inspection document, can we continue to use it as long as it contains all the same information?
Yeah, Don, you want to chime in on this? I'm pretty sure any form that's not ours has to be approved by Mr. Taylor, Don Taylor.
Yeah, just if you want to email a copy of that, your proposed alternative form to don.taylor@tn.gov or to any of the panelists here. They'll forward it to us. We'll review it for approval.
I'll unmute Mickey for just a moment.
Yep. I know.
Mickey, did that answer your question, Mickey?
Yeah. Well, you didn't get to see him in his heyday, but you got to poke and prod him when he was a grumpy old man, as you know. So, but no.
Okay, I'll put Don's email address in the answer to Mickey, and the answer that Don just gave as well. So, all right, I think that's all for now. Let me double check just to make sure. Okay, very good.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess I'll move on to the impressed current. All right, so this has been confusing, and hopefully I can help make sense, make it make more sense. All right, so question 1 here says, what is the as left measurement rectifier output as indicated in section X of your last cathodic protection test? So take your last CP test that you got and enter in your as left measurement on the rectifier. So we'll just use a fake number here. We'll say 8 volts. You got 3 tanks. We'll say 3 amps. And this number will be the same all the way down through here until you get a new test. So all the way down through here, let's say it's time for your 3-year test now. So this month you have a new 3-year test, and they change your volts and amp output. Let's say it goes to 7, or well, let's say it goes to 7 and 3.5. All right, so that'll continue after that. So this is the as left from your most recent CP test. So then you'll take and get your current readings every 60 days. So let's say you're doing good, you're going down through here, everything's staying the same. Well, we're getting closer to the 3-year time for a new test. Let's say it starts changing a little bit. And let's say it goes to 2.7 this month, 9. Let's say it goes to 2.5 this month. All right, so the reason that we do this is you're looking for a change over time. So this may be a little bit more pronounced than it normally would be, but basically we want you to compare these 2 numbers to these 2 numbers. If you see greater than 20% variance in these 2 numbers right here, you need to have some service work done on your CP system. 20% is the magic number to where you're probably not adequately protecting your system any longer, so you need to have some service work done on it. It may be that you just, maybe you got an exposed wire in the parking lot and cars have been running over it for 6 months and they finally cut it in 2. It may be something simple like that. You may have an anode burned out. It could be anything. But as soon as you notice greater than 20% variance in these 2 numbers, you need to take action and contact your corrosion protection technician. All right, question 3, hour meter readings. Very few rectifiers have these. If it does, record it. If it doesn't, just leave it blank. And then this is where you put your 60-day, this is where you put your date that you do the inspection in there. And there's only enough places on here for you to do it every 60 days. If you check it every month, that's fine, but I would only record it every other month on this form, just so you don't have to have 2 of these forms, basically. All right. Any questions over that, Mark? Yeah.
Not so far.
Good deal. All right, so this is quarterly. So this this one blank right here takes the place of our previous form on quarterly dispenser logs. So if you fill this out, you're saying that you checked every single dispenser that you have, and good. If you have if you need to make a repair or something, put it in the comments form, and we'll get to that in a minute. It's at the bottom of the next page. So this one blank right here takes the place of the entire dispenser 60 or quarterly dispenser log that we used to have. All right. For your annual walkthrough inspections. Also, these are not going to be, all four of these are not going to be used at every single site. So I want to sort of break down what's what here. So everybody is going to visually check your containment sumps for damage and leaks to the containment area or release to the environment. That's every single place that has sumps is going to check that. Whether it's interstitially monitored or not, you got to check your containment areas. Even if it's uncontained, you want to look in there and make sure you don't have a leak. So that's required at every SDP and under every dispenser. Make sure that you're good everywhere, once a year, no matter if you're interstitially monitored or not. That's everybody. All right, number 2, removing debris or liquid from those sumps that are required to be liquid tight. So if it is interstitially monitored, make sure that your sensor's working, obviously, if you've got liquid in there. And if you've got just a little bit of liquid, not enough to activate the sensor, just go ahead and remove it before it does cause you an issue. 3, if interstitial monitoring has been performed, check for leaks in the interstices of the double wall sumps. Like I said, there's not a lot of double wall sumps out there, but if you do have one, this is the section that you'll use for that. 4, check your gauging sticks for operability and serviceability on if you use SIR or manual tank gauging only. So this is only if you use SIR or manual tank gauging. This one's only if you have double wall containment sumps. And these two, or this one here is everybody, and this one here is only if you're doing interstitial monitoring. So I hope that makes sense. If you've got questions, feel free to ask. I'll try to clarify better if I need to, but hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory. Here is what I was telling you about earlier. This is your cheat sheet, for lack of better words, of what you've got to keep. This is where, how long you have to keep it and what you have to do. So this is if it says annual, you have to do it every year. If it says every 3 years, it's every 3 years, and then this is how long you have to keep it. So hopefully this will alleviate any question as to what you have to have whenever you got to get ready for an inspection. As long as you fill this form out and you have everything on here, you should do great at an inspection. All right. Also, these are not all encompassing to every facility. If you don't have pressurized piping, then you don't have to worry about number 1 or number 3. You've got safe suction, you don't have to worry about 1, 2, or 3. So it's really kind of site specific, but if you don't understand what you need for your specific facility, feel free to reach out to any of the inspectors that you're familiar with or field officers that you work with, and we'll be happy to go through and tell you line by line on this form if you have to fill it out or not. We'll be happy to do that. I've done that for several people myself, and I know workers feel the same way. Okay. Recommended activities, not required. This is totally recommended. So if you want to go above and beyond at your facility, we have 4 things extra that you can check that will help you. You can inspect your fill or monitoring ports, make sure that the covers and caps are tight, sealed, and locked, which that's just going to help you keep water out of your tank if any of the seals go bad or anything like that. And also theft, if you lock your fill ports, make sure your locks are still on there. Inventory and inspect any emergency spill response supplies. So this is, let's say one of your nozzles quits shutting off, and somebody walks in the store while they got their thing activated, while they got their nozzle activated, and 10 gallons goes all over the place. Well, if you got a little emergency response spill kit, hopefully you'll have some oil dry and stuff like that you can take out there and throw on it. This is things like this that were just recommendations. Significant corrosion on your equipment. That's pretty common with ethanol nowadays. So just keep an eye on it and make sure that you don't have something fail due to that significant corrosion. So let's say you do your annual and you notice, well, that's my STP head's pretty rusted up now. You may want to start checking it monthly due to the fact that you have significant corrosion on that pump head. It's not required, like we said, but recommended. All right, so here's where you take your action or explain your repairs and things. So let's say you have your interstitial monitor and you have a leak, or you get water or fuel in your sump and you have an alarm. So you date your alarm, put what it was, and then what you had to do to alleviate it. If it's water, pumped out, check, let's say it was a loose seal on your lid, something like that, repaired seal on lid. If it's fuel, leak detector got loose, tighten leak detector, anything like that. I'm just giving you examples of what could happen. Dispenser leaks, up to date, drip from premium meter, contractor replaced meter and cleaned up fuel and sump, not enough to activate alarm, something like that. All right, Mark, do we have any questions? Because that's pretty much the end of the form and presentation for me.